Hello and welcome to another episode of Speed Mentorship. My name is Matt Mackler, your host. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode here on Speed Mentorship, a podcast where it's all about leadership and all about trying to improve and get just a little bit better for the people that we serve, okay? One of my favorite things on this podcast is interviewing leaders that have really, really tough and challenging roles, which is what makes it fun, and to really understand how their mind works and to be able to peer into that a little bit. Well, Dr. Somerville is no exception here, and she has a lot of things that she needs to juggle very well to be good in the position that she is in. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Dr. Somerville, and am super excited to dive into today's episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Really excited for today's guest, Dr. Dione Somerville. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, so for today, we got a lot of great questions. First question I have for you is just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Well, I am native to the greater region, and so I'm a native Detroiter. We grew up in the city of Detroit, first generation college student, and my first opportunity to go away to school was at Ohio Northern, where I completed my undergrad. Loved my experience as a student and really fell in love with the opportunity to help impact other people's lives in a very positive way.
Yeah.
And so I was incredibly involved as a student, went to Bowling Green for my graduate degree in college student personnel, and even had an assistantship down at the University of Findlay, and so lots of connections to the area. After that, I got married. My husband and I moved to Greater Cleveland, where we lived for about a dozen years or so, had lots of opportunities at different institutions of higher education, earned my doctorate over at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and then have been at other institutions since, in Iowa, Pennsylvania, and back in Ohio.
Yeah. Very impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, very extensive. That's incredible. So what does somebody, at your level, at your position do on a day-to-day basis? What is that, what are some of the things that you specifically do?
Some of everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of outreach. There's a lot of partnership building, relationship building. One of the things that people realize very quickly coming into roles like this, actually you realize it prior to, is that you are, for better or worse, the embodiment of the institution, and so...
You are Owens right here.
I am the face of Owens.
Yeah.
And so, while I like to believe that that's our students, that's our faculty and staff, whenever you go anywhere, you represent the institution. And so really trying to build those partnerships, get those positive messages through. There's also a lot of work internally at the institution, and especially with me being in my first year, looking at the organizational structure. Do we have the right structure for success? Making sure that people have the resources that they need to be successful.
Yeah.
Looking at our employee base, looking at trends that are impacting us externally, and how do we prepare to meet those challenges, be it, with workforce development or our own employees even. And so that's a big part of what we do, along with the leadership, the day-to-day, the visioning, all of that is kind of all combined into one.
Man, so you're wearing all kinds of hats, huh?
I have a closet full of hats.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, I'd like to hear your definition of what a successful company or a successful organization is.
One that achieves its mission. I think that, as an organization, whether you're making widgets or educating human beings, or if you're, whatever the organization is, if you are truly achieving your mission and what you're meant to do, then that is success.
And that is success. And Owens' mission is what's Owens? I know Owens got a lot of different stuff going on, but what is Owens' mission that we're trying to accomplish?
We're trying to be the institution of choice for students, to help businesses and industries, economic development. And that's our goal. We achieve all that through educating and training students.
Yeah. So why does education matter at the end of the day?
Education matters, period.
Yeah.
And I think people, and I think this economy has skewed the understanding a little bit, but people have better lives overall if they seek education beyond the 12th grade.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be a doctorate, a master's, a bachelor's degree. It doesn't have to be an associate's degree. But if they do something, a certificate, a short-term training, they have better outcomes. First of all, their lifetime earnings will be greater. And that is consistent. And there's been a lot of criticism of higher education because there are some institutions that have very high cost.
Yeah.
And some of the majors that those institutions produce, may or may not earn, a great wage, a great living. But that isn't all of higher education. And some of it does have to do with personal choice. And so you have a greater lifelong learning potential, and that goes up. That does go up with every degree or certification
Absolutely.
that you have. But also, it's something that has been proven over decades and decades and decades. Economists always agree that this is a truism, and it's based on census data. The other thing is that you have other better life outcomes. You have better health. You are less likely to be involved in crime. I mean, there's all these other things that allow you to have a stable life that come from you getting some sort of education. And so it matters because it goes beyond just your your skill or your trade. It has to do with you expose yourself to different people. It's good for different people to talk to one another.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're always going to agree on everything.
Totally.
Actually, it would be boring if we all agreed on everything all the time. But it provides different perspectives, different life circumstances, allows you to look at things from different ways.
Totally.
And that's very helpful because not everyone has the same experience.
Yeah.
We can be, have similar interests, things of that nature, but we'll always see things differently. And so that then helps you as an individual.
Yeah.
It helps in your personal relationships. It helps in your work relationships. And we talk about universal skills or soft skills, as they used to be called. And it's important for people in the workplace to be able to communicate.
Oh my God.
To be able to have empathy.
Yeah.
To be able to synthesize and analyze information, to be able to think critically beyond just what you're doing, but what are some solutions and how you can do things better. And there's strong research over the years that shows how education helps improve those outcomes. It doesn't mean that you can't do any of these things if you didn't go to school beyond 12th grade, but it means that when you do, there's a greater likelihood that you have those skills, and then you're more valuable as an employee.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
It's incredibly powerful. And it's even, we talk a lot about, inclusion and wanting everyone to be able to go to school. One of the biggest predictors of any student's educational attainment is their mother's level of educational attainment.
Ooh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
I didn't know this. Mother over the father?
Mother.
Really?
And I don't know the roots of where that comes from or whatever, or why. Yeah. But that's one of the things that research has borne out. Yeah. And so even if you are like, okay, I'm getting by. I may be working 2 jobs and, whatever, and I'm providing for my family. You're able to do something even more for your children if you go to school. And for many of us, at some point when you have children, it's like, you could do almost anything to me, but don't hurt my children, right? Yeah. And so when you think about it from that perspective, then it's even that much more powerful. Yeah. The cause for education and for women in education. Incredible. Very cool. Very cool. From an organization standpoint, what are some of the biggest challenges either you personally, have faced, or maybe the current organization that you're with now has faced? And then how did you overcome some of those challenges? The biggest challenge of any organization, I think, is culture. When all else fails, every initiative, every structure, whatever it is, culture is the defining factor, or whatever it is you would want to call it, in how your organization moves forward. Yeah. And being able to help shift and change the culture, I think, is always the biggest challenge. When you come into any organization or as you're leaving any organization, I often reflect on, okay, what am I getting into? And am I leaving the place better than I found it?
Yeah.
And I think kind of that ethic of care sometimes is important. Being student-centered is important. Taking initiative is important. All of the things that are hard to measure are
so valuable.
they're incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, you know, as any supervisor, regardless of if you're the leader of the organization or anywhere along the way, you're not going to know what any employee is doing every given minute of their day. You're not.
Yeah.
And so that's where culture and knowing that, okay, someone's lost, how do they take that student by the arm and help them create a path to the future that they want? A visitor is on campus and doesn't know where they're going. And so taking the extra step to say, you know what, I'm walking over here. How about I walk with you? Rather than saying, oh, well, bring up the map on your smartphone and I'll see you later. You know, those extra touches it determine how someone feels about the institution.
Absolutely.
You know, we're about changing hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And it's hard to measure either.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to measure the heart.
Oh, for sure.
And so if someone has a good feeling and a good impression, then they're more likely to feel good about their connection there.
So let's say you walk into a bad culture, you know, and you know, you're there, you're the leader, you gotta, you know, you're the change agent, but you walk into a culture that's bad, that's corrupt, that doesn't have the right stuff going on. How do you go about changing that? Or probably a better example is you walk into a decent culture, one that's decent, but how do you take it to the next level? And what are some of those things? Because you're right, it is very kind of ethereal and it's not very concrete and it's difficult to measure some of those things. But how do you do that? How do you make sure that you are improving the culture and like you said, leaving it in a better place than when you started?
I think that it's a multi-pronged approach. I think, first of all, you have to identify the individuals who embody the kind of culture that we believe you need to aspire to and put them in positions to where, and positions be structurally or opportunities, right?
Yeah.
It could be a committee, it could be, you know, giving them a special project or initiative, or it could be a promotion. I mean, it depends on the organization, their role, lots of things.
Yep.
But I think it's, one of the first things is finding those individuals and putting them in a place where they can shine, where it becomes evident to the rest of the organization that, okay, this is what we're going for.
Yeah. And
they may not necessarily say it in those words or even understand that that's what has happened, but they see it in almost a subconscious way. So I think that that's one thing. You have to address if there's individuals who are cancerous to the organization.
Yeah.
And so if there's someone who is consistently curmudgeonly or, you know, it's one thing to not take initiative. It's another to drag others with you.
Yeah.
And so identifying and addressing those in whatever way you need to.
Which takes a lot of, I think, leadership and courage to do that, because a lot of you see, I'm sure we've seen it all the time where there's an issue and just somebody's not willing to have that difficult conversation with that individual. So I do think it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, there's not a fit going on here, we need to make a change.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And allow that person, I mean, a lot of times people don't even realize how they're coming off to others.
Yeah.
Or the impact that they have with other people. Or that, there's certain people, we've all had this experience, who just suck the life out of a room.
Yeah.
And so how do you help that person identify that, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And there's all the times that you've done this.
Yeah.
Help me understand this. And so there's, those opportunities when you look at people. There's also that mission and vision and strategic visioning that happens where you're able to get the entire organization around, all right, who is it that we aspire to be? What is it that we aspire to be? What are our goals? And what's the role that all of us have? And so I think that's another way to address that culture, because that visioning is, it speaks to your aspirational level, right? And so if we're all aspiring a certain way, that involves cultural shifts potentially. It's also helping empower people to kind of, sometimes we do get kind of bogged down into what is our day to day and our organization and not looking around. And so how is it that we can take a look around? And that could be field trips. That could be looking at best practices. That could be sending people to conferences. That could be inviting speakers in. There's all of those things that go into helping people understand, okay, wow, there's something different. That doesn't mean we're bad, but it means there are certain elements that we might want to borrow or aspire to from other institutions. And so
that's good.
I think all of those come together. Sometimes there are large projects. Years ago I was at an institution and we needed to change our computer platform, our ERP system. And what the leadership of the institution wanted to do was use that as a lever to modernize some of our practices. We were very last century when it came to some of the things we did, but because of some of the longevity in the organization, there was this, we're holding on to this process that we've had since 1982, right? And so, that was an opportunity to kind of force some of that change. And quite honestly, there were some people who were like, yeah, it's about time we did this. And some who were like, what's wrong with my carbon paper?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, it kind of takes a little of everything, but sometimes there's initiatives that can happen to help create that cultural change.
That's good. That's good. What do you, for individual people, for young leaders of today, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see that they experience, and how, what kind of advice do you have for young leaders that are trying to make it today, who might just be stumbling in a few different areas?
I think believe in yourself has to be one of them. Being reflective is another, and paying attention to communication. What I've noticed most in multi-generational workplaces is that sometimes people actually believe the same thing, but they don't know it because how they're communicating it or not communicating it is falling on deaf ears or is somehow ineffective. And so I think that communication piece is hugely important. And how is it that you can, help bring people along? One of the things that I've noticed most about younger people in the workplace, we all pay too much attention to the Gen X and the Gen Z and millennials and all these other things. But one of the things that I've noticed is that there's something that each generation has to teach other generations. And younger people in the workforce value more of I don't like the term work-life balance, but it's the best one I got this morning. But they balance that, they value that,
Absolutely, 100%.
They're not going to work until, the cows come home, because they have other things that they want to do and accomplish in their day. And they value that personal aspect of their lives.
And flexibility to do the stuff that they want to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think some of the older generations see that as skewed thinking. But look at what has happened to many, it's like they're working until they're stressed and have gastrointestinal issues and heart attacks and things of that nature. And they see that and they're like, that's not the life I want.
A few more questions here for you. First one is the top, what does a top performer look like at your organization? How do you measure them? How do you recognize them? And then how do you try to produce more of these top performers?
That's a great question, because that's something we're currently grappling with. And so for me, it's someone who takes initiative, who's student-centered, who believes in our mission. We are just launching a new performance evaluation system. And so to really look at things merit-based and from a qualitative and quantitative perspective. And so part of it would have to be setting goals for the employee, mutually set goals, and them achieving them, and making sure that they are realistic, that they help move the institution forward, things of that nature. And then the reward for it is in a merit-based compensation system.
What about character traits for your top performers? Are there specific things, and you mentioned a few of them already, like, go-getters and, they're taking action, things like that. But are there other characteristics that just do really well in your organization that you want to try and replicate and find more of those?
I think it depends on their job.
Yeah.
And so if you're someone who's in a direct student-facing role, like you're a faculty member or you're in student financial services, and even then different parts of student financial services, if you're an advisor, a coach, you have to enjoy people. Yeah. You have to want to help them. You have to want to talk to them. Whereas there's other roles that aren't as student-facing, that we have different strengths that are required, that are either more data-driven or more analytical or technological in nature. And so I think that the skill set depends on what the role is. Yeah. What I love, we had a employee appreciation celebration where people were getting awards who had been here, 20 years, 25 years. There's people in every walk of our organization who talk about wanting to be here because they love the students. And so you look at people who are on our grounds crew, that's not necessarily someone who you would think of as student facing, but to have someone on the grounds crew or in maintenance or something like that say, I love being here because I love our students. Yeah. That's meaningful. And that speaks to their character as well as to the character of the organization. Very solid.
Okay, so final question is, about the next generation. What kind of advice do you have for the next generation, whether it be students or people just, coming into the workforce? What's your, what's your advice for them?
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. I mean, people can have self-doubt. You can have other people who doubt you. You could feel like you're passed over for opportunities. You could believe that you were dealt a bad hand from the very beginning. Whatever it is, there's something in you that you want to do, that you need to do, whatever it is, and believe in yourself. Because that's where it all starts. Yes, no one achieves anything alone. Yeah. There's multiple people, seen and unseen, who help us along our way. Yeah. But if you can't take that first step, if you don't believe, then there will always be, that doubt there.
That's good. Yeah, I've heard this quote that says, you belong in any room you walk into. I actually saw it at a leadership summit I went to, and I was just like, wow, like that's like profound. Any room you walk into, I think the guy was making a joke, like even the bathroom, but no, he's like, no, any room you walk into, you're a lot more capable than what you think you are.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. No. I have a colleague of mine who's been a really good mentor over the years, and one of the things she says is, own it. Yeah. Own it. It's the same concept as you belong in any room, but own it.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dione.
It's been a pleasure. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, hopefully you guys found value in today's episode. I know I did, and it was for something more than what I was originally thinking, but just how important education really is. And of course, we all know education is important, but I guess the thing that really resonated with me is how important education is for the next generation and how they're going to look to their parents to really be role models for what kind of educational level they are going to achieve in the future. And so the responsibility that we have to make sure that we are stewarding that well for them. I just thought that was really interesting, really fascinating. If you guys found value in today's episode, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of our leadership community. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.